Today, we will discuss grocery retailers and the rising food prices in Toronto.
In recent years, rising food prices have become a significant concern in today's economic landscape, especially in Toronto. From 2022 to 2024, food price inflation in Ontario has surged, impacting consumers, retailers, and producers alike. This period of inflation has been driven by a combination of extreme weather events, global disruptions, and supply chain challenges that have collectively strained the food supply system and increased the cost of essential items. Several factors have intensified these prices increases. Extreme weather events such as wildfires and flooding have disrupted agricultural production, lowering crop yields and pushing up the cost of various food products. The lasting effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on supply chains, resulting in labor shortages, transportation delays, and rising input costs have further strained the food industry. Additionally, general inflationary pressures and the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, which disrupted global grain supplies and drove up energy costs, have compounded the issue. Consequently, the Consumer Price Index for food purchased from stores in Toronto has shown sharp year-over-year increases, leading to higher grocery bills for residents. These rising food costs have prompted changes in consumer behavior, with Toronto residents increasingly focused on budgeting and meal planning to cope with the financial strain. Understanding the drivers of food inflation and its impacts on consumers is essential to developing effective strategies for economic resilience in the face of ongoing volatility.
The first step is production, growing food. Extreme weather like fires and floods is making it harder to grow enough food, which leads to shortage and higher prices. Farmers also face rising costs for things like fertilizer and animal feed, so it's more expensive to produce food. The next step is shipping, where transport costs have gone up, fuel prices are high, making it more expensive to move food. Plus, there aren't enough drivers, so companies have to pay more to get workers, which also raises costs. These challenges in moving food add to the prices we see. Finally, when food reaches stores, all these extra costs from production and shipping are passed on to us, the consumers. This is why we see higher prices on our grocery bills. There have been some debate about whether stores are adding too much, but it's clear that each step is a supply chain raises the cost we pay. To sum up, food prices are going up because of problems in production, shipping, and retail. Each step adds to the overall cost, which is why groceries are more expensive now.
I'll be explaining the grocery retailers and rising food prices stakeholders. So first we have the primary stakeholders. These include grocery retailers such as Loblaws, Metro, Walmart, Sobeys, and wholesalers like Costco who directly sell food to consumers. Next are the consumers, or everyday people who are struggling with higher prices and often have to buy less or choose cheaper, less nutritious options. Suppliers and farmers are also major stakeholders because they grow and produce food but face challenges from rising costs. The government plays a role too as they create laws and policies that affect food prices. We also have employees in retail, farming, and logistics who rely on this industry for work, and investors who are financially tied to grocery and supply companies. Next, on the secondary stakeholders, these include financial institutions such as banks that support these businesses, advocacy groups focus on fair pricing and food security, while local communities feel the impact of higher costs in their daily lives. Together, these stakeholders show how rising food prices affect everyone.
So the main claims of today is the food price is still going up due to the combination of three major problems: pandemic, inflation, and environmental impact like my friend said above. They also have a secondary claims, economic and consumer behavior changes, higher demand for cheaper food, consumer budgeting their grocery and do more home cooking, they become more price sensitive. Secondly, they increase the resilience and strategy planning as a lesson. They try to adapt to the situation, have the emergency fund to aid the situation too. Food securities, government try to increase the affordability to everyone, impact the community health. This can solve the issue to the economic development. About the evidence, the Consumer Price Index CPI indicate that between 2022 and 2024, the Ontario food price rose by more. This include basic like fresh vegetable, dairy, and meat. Data from Statistics Canada also demonstrate that food inflation is a part of ongoing pattern. which is fueled by a number of ongoing issues rather than just a brief increase. The Food Price Data Hub also showed the rising price of fertilizer, seed, and animal feed have driven up the cost for local farmers. And to end my part, the evidence shows that food inflation will be controlled, but the food price is not drop anytime soon.
We'll now examine some of the primary stakeholders' values and assumptions, starting with farmers and suppliers and consumers. Farmers value fairness and equity, and they believe wages should reflect the rising cost of input costs like fertilizer and fuel, which have surged over 100% from May 2020 to May 2023. Additionally, a reality-based assumption of farmers is that global competition and supply chain issues make farming less profitable. Conversely, farmers value access to affordable, quality food and corporate transparency. They often assume grocers prioritize profits, accusing them of greedflation, and believe food prices should align with costs, not corporate gains. Alternatively, some values of retailers like Loblaws and Costco's are doing the right thing and care, ownership, respect, and excellence. Retailers argue that they're unfairly blamed for rising supplier cost and food inflation, when in fact, according to the CFO of Loblaws, the company's profit margin on food is roughly 4%, and they have pushed back on supplier cost increases. Lastly, the government values fair competition and consumer protection, promoting measures like the Grocery Code of Conduct to level the playing field. Policymakers assume that regulation and increased competition can help curb food inflation. Overall, this highlights tensions between farmers, consumers, retailers, and the government in tackling rising food costs. Now look at some of the techniques of persuasion employed by stakeholders, specifically focusing on rhetoric, rival causes, and negative evidence. Starting with rhetoric, Loblaw in a Twitter campaign stated, "We are the face of food inflation," and highlighted that the company makes only $4 profit per $100 spent. This angered consumers and was seen as being tone deaf. Secondly, Loblaw and other retailers argued that implementing a grocery code of conduct would lead to higher prices, saying it could raise food prices for Canadians by more than $1 billion. However, no solid evidence or detailed economic models are presented to support this claim, leaving it up to the audience to speculate on the potential effects. Lastly, retailers such as Loblaws are attributing price hikes to global supply chain issues to dilute accusations of corporate greed. Loblaw's CFO stated, "We received unprecedented cost increases from suppliers this past year, and those costs are beyond our control." In contrast, however, politicians such as Chrystia Freeland and Jasmeet Singh accuse grocers of greedflation, implying that they exploit inflation for profit. This resonates with consumers frustrated by rising costs, reinforcing the narrative that corporate greed is a major driver of food inflation.